So we're going to be talking about The Elephant Whisperer, which is streaming here on Netflix. It is a documentary about a conservationist named Lawrence Anthony who set out to the Tamil region to study these elephant sanctuaries, if you will. So there are people that dedicate their lives to taking care of the wildlife in India, but especially towards these elephants. And on these elephant sanctuaries, if an elephant's injured, either from another animal or from humans, they come to this sanctuary to be taken care of, rehabilitated, and eventually grow up to be re-released into the wild. And that's exactly what Lawrence Anthony went to go study. Now, when he went over to one of these sanctuaries, he met a couple named Boman and Belly, and he essentially just documented and tracked their lives of taking care of an animal or of an elephant that they named, I believe, Radhu. They named the elephant Radhu. Nonetheless, this was originally written as a book. It came out a few years ago, and Netflix just released a documentary directed by Kartiki Gonsalves, who wanted just to bring the story to the big screen, show people, just how much, just how much people really care about the wildlife in the Tamil region. And not just that, there is actually this tribe that I'll get into a little bit later that has, come to make this kind of like their way of life or their way of getting by. So as I said, we're brought by these two characters, Boman and Belly. Boman and Belly, husband and wife, they met essentially at the sanctuary. Belly originally had a husband who was unfortunately mauled to death by a tiger. So she was deathly afraid of animals in general, did not really want to be around animals. But she was actually assigned to be Boman's assistant. And sooner or later, they, grew a liking for each other and really grew a passion for wanting to take care of these animals. At the same time, they're from a tribe called and excuse my pronunciation here, but it's called the Katunayakar tribe. They're a forest community that resides in the Mundu Malai Forest Reserve in Tamil Nadu, India. They essentially, this is their entire life. They work on this elephant sanctuary, they rehabilitate these animals. And one day they came across an elephant who was only about 1.5 years old and had a lot of critical injuries. There were some wild dogs that bit off its tail. It had a lot of infections and wounds from maggots, all over its body. And it was very, very malnourished. So it was brought into this sanctuary, and Bowman and Belly are absolute experts in handling elephants, and they took care of this young calf. They named it Raghu, and the entire documentary is just showing how they essentially bring in this elephant, not just to the sanctuary, but into their own lives. Like, it's essentially a family now. You have husband, wife, and an elephant. So throughout this whole documentary, we just see like the interactions. The elephant's very playful. Like, in fact, if any of you guys have owned a dog before, it reminds me very much of like having a dog, because you'll see the elephant just have these, playful little antics with Bowman and Belly. The elephant's communicating with them, like responding, through elephant noises, however an elephant communicates with people. And you can tell that there is just round the clock attention and care for this young calf, especially with the condition that it was in when it was first brought into the sanctuary. And eventually this elephant got to the point where it was getting a little older. It was no longer really the best environment to keep it in the sanctuary. And they essentially handed it off to another group of caretakers who would really work kind of for the rest of this elephant's young life to reintroduce it into the forest. Now, that's the whole premise of this documentary. But let me just tell you, this was a very well needed documentary for, I just believe, overall society, because as I said, it was originally a book. It was actually originally an audiobook. It was narrated by a guy named Simon Vance. And now it's on the big screen. And this is a story that like we just don't really see a whole lot, because we see a lot of nature documentaries about, maybe how humans are affecting the earth.
Class and people and portraits of lives. But no, I haven't seen a documentary about animal if you're an animal lover, this is something you watch. And a documentary about an elephant
the last
sanctuary.
Type of documentary I remember of this sort. The last one I remember of this sort was Tiger King, and that is complete the opposite of taking care of animals and such, right? Like there
Yeah,
hasn't been
but
one.
but you know what I really liked about the documentary? Number one, of course, guys, if you don't know, it was nominated for BAFTA. It was nominated at HCA. This documentary is also nominated for Oscars, which are just coming up the weekend of 10th of March,
Yeah,
and you know, this is a very, I after watching 41 minutes of this this documentary, I felt that this really, really, really deserves what it's been nominated for. But not only, I think the strength of Elephant Whisperers is actually two things. One, comparing the bond that parents have to children, to the bond that these two people, Bowman and Belly, have towards this elephant, right?
yeah,
And that's so beautifully portrayed. And then the second thing that I actually loved was how integral these animals are to their society. And
yeah.
we can't even imagine how these animals become a part of their society, and then how the next generation of caretakers are learning how to bathe and play with these elephants. And I thought that was really, really, really well modulated.
Yeah, I mean, it really just shows how, like, one of the largest animals on this planet is a very majestic one. And it's a very respected animal in those cultures as well. Something that we don't really think deeply about whenever we think about, how humans are, either illegally poaching elephants or illegally taking care of them. In fact, the film actually addresses that Raghu, they took, because Raghu was a calf, right? They found in the middle of the forest with a lot of wounds. And you might be wondering, where's the mother? Well, they do talk about how the mother did unfortunately die, kind of with some human tampering and stuff, with some poaching efforts and whatnot. So
You know,
it did address
I
the
remember there's
human.
a scene where Bowman says about his bond with Raghu. He says that this is
Yeah,
God's presence in my life.
yeah,
Without Raghu, we'd have nothing. They
yeah.
loved that elephant so much.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, many of you can imagine a kid leaving for college and how heartbreaking that is. Imagine, this deep connection you have with the elephant, and then you have to release it into the wild. They always say that if you love something, you should always be able to let it go. And, when you're watching this documentary, you feel a little bit of that relationship that Bowman and Belly had with this elephant, because you see this young calf, very damaged and everything, ultimately grow up, with a great family, with great care, and get to re-enter its natural habitat. One that'll bring you close to tears. One that is very well deserving of every award nomination it gets. It's shortlisted for the 95th Oscars in the documentary short film category. So highly recommend you go and watch this. Highly recommend you go to the review on Daisies.live. That's right, I said it. We're done with the review.